Likkutei Torah Dvarim Daf Beis, Parshas Vaeschanan. Vaeschanan el Havaya v'goymer. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I begged God to let me enter Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe continues saying, Ata chiloisa v'goymer. You began, laharis avdecha as godlucha, you began showing your servant your greatness. And Moshe Rabbeinu goes on saying, since you began showing me your greatness, please let me enter the land to see the land also, to see all your greatness. Because you already began, Ata chiloisa, you began showing your greatness. As the Alter Rebbe, we need to understand, what does it mean, Ata chiloisa, you only began showing your greatness? Weren't there many miracles until now, like Kriyas Yamsuf, Yitzias Mitzrayim, Matan Torah, the war with Amalek, and things like that? How is it possible to say that this is all just the beginning? Ahaschala, ataha chiloisa. You only began showing your greatness. Now, just to understand the structure of the Maimer, what the Alter Rebbe is going to eventually answer is the ataha chiloisa, you began, is the Bechin of Limud Torah, is the aspect of Limud Torah is called ataha chiloisa, you began. But in order to appreciate how Limud and why Limud Torah is called you began, so the Alter Rebbe first differentiates and shows how Tefillah is different than Torah, because we have to begin. And after explaining at length the inyan of what Tefillah is all about, then he's going to contrast it and say how Torah is the inyan of Ata Chiloisa. Hine, in order to understand this, Chazal say, Actually, Nivra Olam Hayahu Shmei Bilvad. But l'chor, we don't understand how is it shaykh before the creation of the worlds that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a name, that he and his name were alone. Who could call him by his name? Acha inyan, the inyan to understand all this, what's the whole inyan of davening? The Hine Isa B'Zohar Kodesh. The Holy Zohar says that the whole tachlis of the creation of a person, of man, is begin li'ishtamoidale, in order for God to make himself known to man, for us to know God. Bira dvarim, to understand what is this das, this li'ishtamoidale, this das that we have to have in God. To understand this, hine yeridas v'shtalshlos hamadregas b'tzumtzumim rabim, that the worlds were created through a long descent of many different contractions and concealments and a downshading until finally there could be this created world. All this descent and all these tzumtzumim is tzorech aliyah, is for the ascent that's going to come out of it by turning the darkness to light. And that's why God created a person on earth, in this world, because since this world, Olam Haza, is such a lowly world and the darkness is doubled and quadrupled, therefore, since it's so dark, there has to be many candles to illuminate the darkness. And therefore God created man, who is the light, who is the candle. As it says, Ner Havai Nishmas Adam, that a Jew is a candle that shines, the revelation of Shem Havaya, Bibechinas Gilui. In other words, the Alter Rebbe is saying, what makes a neshama a candle? By having the Havaya, in a Gilui, in a revealed way in it. As we're going to learn soon, what does it mean to have Havaya revealed within a person? But dafka, by having the Havaya revealed within a person in a revealed way, that's how one illuminates Olam Haza and turns the darkness to light. And this aspect of the tachlis, of the purpose of the Jewish people to draw down the light into the world, is why Hashem said to Avraham, V'heyei bracha, that you and your offspring will be a blessing, will be bracha. Bracha bekerev ha'aretz. Or like it says, the pasuk says that about the Jewish people, Hem zera berach havaya. They are the seed berach havaya that does baruch to havaya. What's the meaning of baruch, which is how we illuminate the world? Baruch is lashon hamshacha. Baruch means a drawing down, a spreading forth. Like the word lahav is a geffen, that a person grafts together two different plants. That's called lahavrich, to graft. What do you do when you graft? You put two plants together that the vitality from one plant should be drawn into the other plant. So lahavrich is a lashon that means to draw down. And our job is to be mavrich, to draw down baruch havaya min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam, to draw down havaya from one world to the other, min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam. What does it mean from one world to the other? From alma diskasya la alma disgalia, meaning until now God is in the world of alma diskasya, God's light is concealed, and we have to draw down and illuminate it into alma disgalia, the revealed world that havaya should be bebechinas gilui. And that's why Yisrael are called Zera Berech Havaya, the seed that draws down God into the world, Ner Havai Nishmas Adam. And there are tens of thousands of different souls, that are tens of thousands different candles, because since the darkness is so great and thick, a doubled and quadrupled darkness, therefore there has to be many candles to illuminate that darkness and draw Havaya down. And how do you make that Gilui? What does it mean to do bracha berach Havaya, to draw down Havaya? How do you make that revelation of God in the world? The revelation of God's light in the world is through God's light being revealed in a revealed way within a person. And how do we know when does a person have God's light revealed within them? When they have a spilus beleva adam, when a person's heart is completely in a state of ecstasy, when a person has an emotional connection in a very deep way to God, that they feel it within their emotions, within their heart, that their soul wants to leave the sheath of the body to be kav kloisa nefesh to havaya. That's how God is begili in the world, when it actually affects a person's emotions, when it touches a person all the way bepnimius of what a person really is. By God's light becoming revealed in a conscious way within the pnimius of a person, that causes God's light to be revealed bepnimius in the world. It's not enough just to have hisbonenus with the mind, that God is mamali kolaman and save of kolaman and leisas arponimine, because that's not called gilui. If it's just in the mind, if a person's just thinking about it and being misbonen in the mind, it's not yet gilui. It's not really revealed within the person. It's still alma diskasya. God is still in a concealed state. It's still bechinas helem. As long as the light doesn't shine into the toich nekudas levave, into the innermost depth of a person's heart, then it's just makif. It hasn't penetrated a person's pnimius. It's just makif milamaila. As is known what Chazal say, the famous proof when a thief goes to steal, ganva pumachtar serach manakar, that when a thief goes to steal, he asks God to help him. Because that means that the idea of God and Torah hasn't penetrated to his heart. It's still a makif. It's not negeya to atzmius husa nefesh mamish. It hasn't become important enough to the essential aspect of a person's soul that the idea of the truth of God should actually be unified with a person, but rather the opposite. The hisbonenus is like a davar nifrad from the person. As long as it's just in the mind, you could have a lot of things in the mind. That doesn't mean it changes you until it hits your heart in the deepest way. That's when it's begilui, when it's negeya el atzmis nefesh mamish, when it touches you in the deepest essence of the soul mamish, then it's called begilui. Meaning that one puts to one's heart how Hashem is mamali kol almin and sovev kol almin, and the more one puts that to one's heart, the soul is no longer able to contain its being enclosed within a physical body and the darkness of the taivus of this world, but instead one's soul, rucha v'nishmasa elav yesef, that one's soul is in a state of wanting to connect and become included within God, to be unified within its source. And this is the inyan, what the Zohar means, begin l'shtamoidele. As we said, that's the tachlis of a person, that God should be known. What does it mean, l'shtamoidele, das? Meaning that it touches a person mamish to the heart, that it affects a person in the deepest way, because das doesn't just mean intellectual knowledge. Das is hakara v'hargasha mamish, as we're going to learn in the next Maimah of Yadata Yom, the inyan that das is hakara v'hargasha. The Rebbe Rashab also explains it in Kunshas HaTefillah at length, that it means that you feel with the mind. Das means that your mind feels the idea. That's how deep it connected to you and unified with you. V'al derech zeh, in order to come to this love of Hashem, which is the purpose of all davening. That's why in Psukei de Zimra they were masakin to say Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, meaning that the inyan that she'amar v'haya olam should be Baruch within you. Baruch, what should flow into you in the deepest way? Baruch, the inyan of Shamar v'haya olam, the hisbonenus, that how all the worlds were created just with one speech of God, with like one word. Imagine you just say one word, how little of you invest in that. So all of the worlds were created with just a speech of God, and that has to be within your pnimius. We have to feel that begilui b'pnimius. Then it's called Baruch. It flows down within us in a giluidik way, in a revealed way, when we have actually spilus alev, from that God created all the worlds with just a speech. That one's heart actually has a love for God because of the insignificance of the world. And that's why also in Baruch Shamar it says 13 times the word Baruch, corresponding to the 13 tikkunei dikna, the 13 parts of the divine beard, which is an aspect of hair. Beard is hair. which again, the Indian, what does it mean that the worlds are coming from the 13 hairs of the beard of Hashem? That means just like hair of a person doesn't touch the essence of the body. It's just like extra stuff that the body gives out, which is why if you cut the hair, you don't feel pain. The hair is, how much of your soul is put in the hair? Nothing. It doesn't hurt when you cut it. So too, we have to know that all the revelations of God's light to become revealed within the heart of a person doesn't touch, is not negeh to atzmis musadavar, doesn't touch Hashem, it doesn't make any change in Hashem or add anything in Hashem, because it's only the light of the beard that's being revealed within the world. And then Alter Rebbe says that 12 of these 13 baruchs and baruch she'amar are specific types of hamshachis, 12 different types of hamshachis in specific ways. And the 13th baruch is when it says Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam, which is the general baruch. That's the general drawing down, is Baruch Atah Havaya. And what does it mean? How do you touch up the words Baruch Atah Havaya Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam? That Havaya should be Baruch, should be Begilui, as if it's mamish in front of you, as if Havaya is mamish lenoichach, standing in front of you, Bechinas Ata. Baruch, what should be Baruch within you? Ata. That what liyos Elokeinu, that God should be unified within us to the extent that we could say Elokeinu shelonu mamish, that Hashem is mamish ours. Because Havaya contains all the other specific types of the 13 different types of Hamshachas, and it's the beginning and the ikr of all the Hamshachas is the Baruch Atah Havaya Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam. Ad kan is Ois Aleph. Now in Ois Beis, the Alter Rebbe begins Ubira Inyan Zeh, to further explain this inyan of davening, of how Hashem has to be begilui in a person's lev, within a person's heart. Hashem has to be revealed. In order to understand this better, we know that it says ubetuvei mechadesh b'chol yom tov and masa bereishis. What does it mean mechadesh? Mechadesh literally to makes new. What does it mean that he's making the world new always? That it's chadash. Or seemingly all the days are equal. Today is the same as yesterday. This day is the same as the day before. What's the mechadish? What's the chiddush over here? The Alter Rebbe is going to explain, because the world's vis-a-vis Hashem is mamash a chiddush in a way. How is that? Because we know there's what's called seder shtalshlus, the usual way of the worlds of downchaining of seder shtalshlus from one level to another, that each level causes the level below, that it's a successive process of contractions down through all the worlds. But then there's an aspect of Hashem that's l'mayla from Ishtalshalos, because that God is in a way of Seder Ishtalshalos generally is just like by a person. Within a person there's a successive process of how one reveals oneself. You first have your seichel, then your emotions, that brings about thoughts in the mind, and then speech. So one level gives birth to the next level below it. The seichel gives to midas, midas to machshava. So too when it comes to the downchaining of worlds and the many different descents of God's light from one step to the other in a progressive way, that it's also this hishtalshlus from one step to the other, one world to the next. Though it's different from by a person, because by a person, one's machshava doesn't do anything, doesn't cause anything to happen. Mash'enken, by Hashem's machshava, God's thoughts actually create worlds, just like His speech creates worlds, b'devar havaya shemaim nasu. So seemingly it's not like a human being's thought and speech. So why is it called the divine thought and the divine speech? Because, and this the Alter Rebbe also explains in Tanya Perek Chaf Aleph, because the inyan of thought and speech is gilui, to reveal. And that thought reveals to a person to themselves, and speech reveals to someone else. And so the revelation of all worlds, that they came out of God from potential to actual, from concealment to revealed way, that's called machshava. And then when it becomes more revealed, it becomes dibur. But all the different worlds, one step to the other, there are many, many different madregas of ishtalshus and tremendous tzimtzumim, and each level is called the machshava vis-a-vis the level under it, which is called dibur. So what's called dibur in one world, vis-a-vis the world under it, that's called machshava. Like the Zohar says, kama machshavtin the machshavtin, da moichel da. There are many levels of mind, each one is a mind for the next. Hashem has many minds, so to speak, many levels of machshava, because each level, when it has a level below, it becomes the machshava for the level below, which is an inyan of dibur. Meaning that in each world there's the machshava, there's the revelation within God, so to speak, and then when it comes revealed to the next world further down, that's like the dibur. That's a lower mind, a lower moich, lower moichin. But then when that lower world then reveals from that to the next level, dibur to the next level, then that world becomes machshava. And this idea of this progressive downchaining from God is what the Gemara means when it says that God has bati gavoyu, bati baroi, inner houses and outer houses, meaning inner aspects of self and outer aspects of self, pnimius and chitzonius, and the pnimius of every world becomes the chitzonius of the world above it, and that's how there's thousands of levels, tens of thousands of ishtalshus and madregas to an extent that can't even be counted. But all of this, all these levels that we're talking about until now is all called inyan of ishtalshus and a seder. That there's a seder, an order of how each world comes out from the world before. That each world is a gilui of what the previous world had behelim. But all worlds are coming in a way that it's just revealing what was in the world before that. But that's all shaykh only within ishtalshlus, within emanated and created levels. Within the realm of ishtalshlus, within that realm, it's shaykh to say that there's an orderly progressive way from seichel to midas to machshava, just like by in a person, so to by Hashem, each world reveals what was in potential in the world before. But that's only within ishtalshlus. Avalagabe hamatzil atzma yizbarach, vis-a-vis the emanator himself, Hashem yizbarach, ein aroich klal, everything is completely incomparable. And it's not shaykh to say that the worlds are created from God himself, from the matzil, from the essential emanator, in a way of ishtalshlus from one step to the next, because there's no comparison between any created thing to the creator. And so how could created beings receive their vitality from atzmusei and mahusei kiviyachol? How could there be a gilui of koyach atzmusei that through that things should be created? Because we know Hashem is rom v'nisa l'maila in ketz. God is incomparably above an infinite amount, and therefore no created being could be created even through a lot of ishtalshalus. Hashem is so completely en aroich, even if you have an infinite levels of ishtalshalus, they'll never be able to be created in anything, because Hashem is antu chad v'lei b'chushban. Hashem is completely above number, any revelation that could be somehow a source of created worlds. But rather, that's what it means, ubetuvei mechadesh, that vis-a-vis Hashem and in atzmusa mahusei, all the worlds are a chiddush, that through the tuv of Hashem, through the goodness of Hashem, of atzmusa kaviyachol, Hashem is mechadesh, makes from completely new ma'aseh bereishis, mamash ma'ayin yesh ma'ayin, completely new, v'achachma ma'ayin timatzeh, the highest level of chachma, which is the first level of ishtalshlus, that has to come in a way of ayin, meaning from nothing, meaning that at that level, vis-a-vis Hashem's infinite essence, everything is taka chiddush, mechadesh, it's completely new. It can't come through a way of ishtalshlus like the lower levels. We're going to the next page. Rather, chachma, which is the highest level, the first level of ishtalshlus, comes in a way of yesh ma'ayin, davar chadash, a completely new thing that wasn't in potential in its source. And how does Hashem bring about this new revelation? It's through Yud Kei Vav Kei. That Yud is the tzimtzum. Yud makes the tzimtzum of Hashem's light, that it should be shaykh to come to worlds. And then the Hey and the Vav and the Hey are the progressive way that God's light is able to form to become Alma Diskas and Alma Disgalia. The first Hey is Alma Diskasya, and the second Hey is Alma Disgalia, and the Vav connects the two. And so now we have a deeper understanding of what Baruch Ata Havaya means. That we're saying that what should be drawn down Havaya, that Havaya should be Begilui. Havaya, which is the source of everything, should be Begilui in a person's heart, that a person should have a spilus. Person should have emotions and a feeling in the heart from that God is completely above ishtalshlus. Ein areichelav, everything is incomparable to him. Rather, that he creates all the worlds is just in a way of Havaya, tzimtzum and ispashtus. There has to be a tzimtzum in order to bring about the light that's going to create the worlds. There has to be a big tzimtzum, and that's why now that we understand that the worlds are created from the light after tzimtzum, now we could understand what it means. What was the name of God that existed before He created all the worlds? It's that Hu Hayahu Shmei Bilvad. Hu is Mahusev Atzmusei Baruch. And Shmuel, what is his name? His name is also Ein Sof. It's the Or Ein Sof that was originally Kolul Batzmusai. The Hainu, what does it mean that it's called his name? It's the Yecheles, the ability of Mahusav Atzmusai to draw down a light that's Ein Sof. And this Yecheles is called Hashem's name. This idea, by the way, is explained at great length by the Rebbe Rashab in Hemshech Samach Vav, the Maimer Ki Imcha Makor Chaim. And this idea that we learn that the whole tachlis of our creation is for the das, for the karv our gosha, to know God in a deep way, to the extent that it brings about love in the heart. This is the meaning of the pasuk V'ahavta es havaya lekecha. In Lashon Kodesh, the word ava is a desire of the mind, when the mind wants something. Ahava, with the extra hey corresponding to the hevel halev, is when the will mamish penetrates the heart, that the heart has a tshuka, has a deep desire. And what's the v'ahavta? What's the deep desire of the heart? That havaya should be elikecha, v'ahavta es havaya elikecha. That havaya atzmoi should be shoyer b'cha, should be within you, to be elikashelcha, havaya elikecha. That Hashem should be your God within you mamish. That Hashem should be united within you in a revealed way. So one arouses this tremendous desire to have God within oneself in a real deep way, in a revealed way, and it should be b'chol levavcha. We go on to say v'ahavta b'chol levavcha. That means that when Havai is drawn into us in a revealed way, it should be b'chol levavcha, two hearts, the pnimius halev and chitzonius halev. Like we said before from the Gemara, what the Gemara calls the bate gavayu, bate broi, the inner houses and the outer houses, the inner part of self and the outer part of self. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that we want to draw down Havaya to be elekecha, within both hearts, both parts of the heart. He's going to explain first what's pnimius halev and then what's chitzonius halev. Pnimius halev, as explained in the Maimer Kitishma in Parshas Re'eh, Pnimius halev is the hispilus from Atzmuse Mahusis Baruch that no thought could grasp. When one actually, the depth of one's soul comes to a hispilus from the essence and being of God that's beyond any thought. Which is the meaning of what the pasuk says, Ata haresa ladas ki avayahu elikim ein oid. Because haresa, what does it mean haresa? You were shown as a bechinas gilui, which means that it's in pnimius halev. And this is the inyan that's called ava mesuteres, the hidden love that's in the nature of every person. And when a person arouses this love of pnimius halev by davening, a reshimu of it remains the entire day, even after one davens. And chitzonius halev is when the ahava also has a practical effect on a person, that the love spreads forth to be able to actually do a skafia sitra achra, and to turn the darkness to light. First, a person does a skafia, as it says, oitzem einav mir'ois bera, that one shuts one's eyes from seeing something bad. And it also says further in Kriya Shema, v'lo yisasur achrei levavchem, and the Alter Rebbe learns here, what does that mean? That the lo yisasur, the not straying after the eyes and the heart, is because achrei levavchem, meaning that levavchem wants that there should be begili bechinas havaya. Because the world in and of itself, oilam lashon helem, the world in and of itself conceals and hides the light of God from being revealed. And therefore one has to do a skafia. And then is hapcha chashoichel and ahira, the turning of darkness to light. Peirush, what does it mean to turn the darkness to light? That the koyach of the element, the natural element of fire within a person's natural soul, to have taivas for all things, shouldn't be turned from the darkness of this world, to instead have a taiva l'dovka b'yizbarach, to have a taiva of dveikus. Because the Alter Rebbe explains, everyone in their natural soul has this natural passion, this natural hisgabrus of heat within the soul. That's what causes taivas and causes a person to be drawn after taivas. But when a person cools off their connection to Elam Hazeh and comes to a place of actually being disgusted by Ra, so then that passion, that natural heat by itself, me'elu v'memelu, automatically is going to be a burning up of heat and passion for Elukus. Meaning to come to a place of ahavta b'chol levavcha, that one should have a taiva with all one's heart, that there should be revelation of God, that alma diskasia should be revealed in alma disgalia. And this avoid of turning the darkness to light is the isrus delasat of tefillah. This is the arousal from below, which is what tefillah is all about. This aspect of tzok libam, the screaming of the heart, veitzak or lavaya betzar lehem, that a person is memari the chushban, a person takes a cheshbon nefesh, and through all of this, through this desire of the heart, of the soul for God, al yedei zer ruach, I see ruach v'amshich ruach. Spirit brings spirit and draws down spirit. meaning through the arousal from below that draws down God to then do the inyan of bracha, which is hamshacha begilui to be baruch ata havaya. Ad kan hazois beis. And until now the Alter Rebbe explained the inyan of tefillah, which is essentially all the avoid of the tachten to come to v'haftas Hashem Elokecha. Tefillah is primarily in Asus de Lasata, but then the Alter Rebbe begins in Ois Gimel, Ach v'Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Talmud Torah is greater than all mitzvahs, including Tefillah. Limud HaTorah is the mitzvah of v'higisa b'yomam v'layla. And what is learning Torah? Even something that we don't know if there's going to be a psak din l'maisa, like all the kashas, the questions in the Gemara that are not a liba de hilchasa. And even if a person learns and doesn't understand the psak din from the Gemara, and even those things in the Gemara that are never negeh l'maisa at all, it's all a mitzvah Talmud Torah, meaning as opposed to tefillah, which has to be subjective, pneumius, within a person's heart in a very deep pneumius way. Talmud Torah is talking about things that don't have to be lamaisa, are not relevant at all lamaisa. And it could be I don't even understand what's the psak din about these things that I'm learning. Because the inyan of Talmud Torah, it's not so relevant, the tachten. Rather, Talmud Torah is rakam shacha, is serus del eila. Talmud Torah is just an arousal from above. Dvaray asher samti b'ficha, my words that I put in your mouth. And the samshach of Torah is done not through an asus de lasata. Fakir to asus de lasata can't reach this level only through limud Torah. The letters, the tzirufe oisius, one actually draws down this level that Isus de Lasata can't reach. That's Karv Havai L'chol Koirav L'chol Asher Yikru Be'emes Ve'ein Emes Ala Torah. That Torah is how one is Koira, one calls the Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is also in Tanya in Parak Lamed Zayin, that that's what a Koira B'Torah means. That like Korah can mean reading Torah, but could also mean to call out, to call to someone. So Koira B'Torah is that you're calling out to God, that Havai should be revealed, it should be nimshach, and that's v'hayu advarim ha'ela asher anoichi mitzav chayim alav avecha v'dibarta bam, that these words that anoichi misha anoichi, that atzmus umahus is drawing down to you by itself, should be on your heart. Meaning that these words are coming from Anoichi Mitzavcha. They're all coming from Lamailis, Sus de La'ela, but all we have to do is V'dibarta bam, which simply means, of course, to speak these words. But in a deeper way, V'dibarta is Lashon Hanhaga. V'hamshacha, Lashon of leading and drawing, so to speak, guiding something and drawing it down. Like we say in the Lamanatzech before Shefer, Yad Ber Amim, to guide, to lead nations. So V'dibarta bam means that bam, with these letters of Torah, just by saying them, one is V'dibarta, one is guiding and leading the Anoichi Misha Anoichi, which is the Isus de La'ela. That happens by itself without any Isus de Lasata. By saying these words, one guides and leads God into the world, because this is a level that's way above Isus de Lasata, and therefore Torah draws down this highest level that Tefillah and Isus de Lasata can't reach. And that's why we find by Torah the Lashon Chanina. Chanina means to be granted something for free. Like we say, V'sayroscha chaneni in Tehillim Kuf Yutes. Because Torah, because it's coming from this aspect of V'sus de La'ela, of God that can't be reached even through Tefillah, it has to be granted. Torascha chaneni. Ata chinantonu lemada terasecha. As we're going to learn later on, Vaeschanan is Lashon matnas chinam. And this is the deeper meaning of what it says, Umimidbar matana, from the desert one gets the gift. The desert means the place that lo yoshev adam sham, that a person can live there. Which in a deeper meaning, what does it mean, lo yoshev adam sham? That Isus de Lasata can't reach there at all. Because lo yeshav adam, because when does Isus de Lasata, when does an arousal from below reach, what level does it reach? The level of Adam ha'elyon. When Hashem is already within the spheres in the form of an Adam. Kemaim apanim apanim. So therefore that's the Indian Isus de Lasata is maim apanim lapanim ken leva Adam el Adam. But when it comes to the desert is loy Adam hu, it's the aspects, the revelation of God's light, ki loy Adam hu, before the tzimtzumim to come into a bechin of Adam, which is a level that Isus de Lasata can't reach. That's why it says lo yeshav Adam sham, rather it comes from Isus de La'ela in and of itself, bebechinas matana, that's mimidbar matana, from this aspect of the midbar of God, beyond being called Adam, above being called Adam, that's why it's called midbar. That is given in a way of matana. which is also what it means, Ki ba'or panecha nasata lanu Toras Chaim, that God, you give us the light of your face with Torah. And now the Alter Rebbe answers the question he began the Maimer with. That's what it means, Ata hachiloisa laharesis avdecha, that you began showing your servant. And we asked at the beginning of the Maimer, what do you mean? Hashem only began showing his greatness, all the miracles of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf. But rather the inyan is that Moshe kibel Torah misinai. Moshe is connected to Torah. And Torah, we know, is the bechin of hachiloisa, that you begin, Hashem. Isrus de la'ela levad. Ata achiloisa. You begin it in and of yourself. Torah is v'dibarta, draws and leads down the highest aspect of God by just saying the words of Torah. One is drawing down the anoichi misha anoichi, that level which is really just an isrus de la'ela. We're not drawing it down. It's just we're opening our mouth and saying the words of Torah, and it happens by itself. That's the ata achiloisa. That you, Hashem, you begin. That's a level that only God could give over as a matana. And not only that, but even for our ability to do an Isrus de la Sata, to a level that there can be an Isrus de la Sata, there also has to be first Isrus de la Eila. Even for us to do an Isrus de la Sata, there has to first be Isrus de la Eila also. It has to be Ata Chiloisa. Like we know, it says in Pirkei Avos that every day a baskol comes out of Sinai, etc., which brings about Hirurei Tshuva in a person. So even the arousal from below really came from above. And this is why the Chachamim were masak in Birkas HaMitzvahs, that before doing a mitzvah, one has to first say a bracha, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav. Meaning, what does it mean, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav? That the mitzvahs bring the kedusha, which is a level of isrus de la sata. Mitzvahs are isrus de la sata, that one takes physical objects like the tzemer of tzitzis and tefillin and made of klaf, and the suk and the lulav, and through these physical objects, that's what causes isrus de la eila. That our avoid of mitzvahs brings about the kedushana b'mitzvahs of the kedusha yoina, the isrus de la sata. But we learned that in order to be able to do an Isrus de la Sata that could arouse an Isrus de la Eila, there has to first be an Isrus de la Eila to give us the koyach to do that. That's why the Chachamim were masak in Birkas HaMitzvahs to say Baruch Atah Havaya Elokeinu Melech Olam, that Havaya should be Baruch down here Lamata. And through that, through the Birkas HaMitzvahs touch that aspect of Isrus de la Eila, and through that there could be Asher Kedishana b'mitzvahs v'tzivanu. Meaning that in a way the Birkas HaMitzvahs is even higher than the mitzvah itself, because the bracha of the mitzvah is what arouses the Isrus de la Eila that's going to allow the mitzvahs to cause an Isrus de la Sata. And so this is the aspect of Ata Chiloisa, this highest level of Isrus de la Eila that can't be reached by man, only given in a way of Chanina Vaeschanan. And now the Alter Rebbe explains the rest of the pasuk after Ata Chiloisa, that Moshe is saying he wants this level of Ata Chiloisa. Moshe then says, Ebrana ve'eretz ha'aretz, let me cross over the Yarden and be able to see the land. Because what does that mean? He wanted to draw down this inyan of Ata Chiloisa into Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Ha'elyoina, which is Knesset Yisrael. As is known, Knesset Yisrael is called Eretz Chayfetz. And Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down the bechin of Ata Chiloisa, which is the bechin of Isrus de la Eila, that happens without the Isrus de la Sata. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to draw down in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Elyoina, into Klal Yisrael. Ad kan is Ois Gimel.